All she wanted was to cash her paycheck, period. But the moment the teller laid eyes on her skin, nothing was the same. Whispers danced across the marble floor, pens hovered in midair, and eyes that had once appeared professional went cold and suspicious. The check wasn't counterfeit. The funds were legitimate. But to them, she couldn't possibly be. In minutes, what should have been a routine afternoon escalated into humiliation, rage, and disbelief. They tore up her check like her dignity meant nothing. What they didn't know was who her mother really was. Ever since she could remember, Alyssa Green had believed in working hard. Each morning she rode the same early bus into Atlanta's downtown area. Pressed uniform, shining shoes, and a silent drive that came from observing her mother create something from nothing. Alyssa was just starting her first legitimate job, a tiny gig at a small Atlanta marketing agency, and that week's paycheck felt like evidence that she was finally getting ahead. The sun was high as she walked through the glass doors of the bank, her heart aglow with pride. The check in her hand was not much, but it was hers. The air that surrounded her was slightly scented with coffee and cologne. A bank where people came and went without looking twice. But as she approached the counter, she saw something change. The teller's smile wavered. A suit-clad manager leaned in, speaking in hushed tones she couldn't quite hear. Then, as if time itself was slowing down, dragging down, the whole room seemed to move slower, heavier. Alyssa didn't know why, but the warmth she came in with was already dissipating. She had no idea yet, but that still moment, standing at a counter, clutching a plain piece of paper, was on the verge of challenging every notion she had about fairness, respect, and the world she thought she was a part of. The manager's heels snapped loudly across the shiny floor as he moved towards her. His voice had that same courteous hostility Alyssa had learned to recognize over the years, too suave to call out, but biting enough to cut. "Ma'am, we'll need to verify this," he said, glancing at her check like it carried a stain. Alyssa nodded, confused but compliant. She'd done everything right, signed, endorsed, presented her ID. Still, the manager's eyes kept drifting to her face, not her paperwork. Minutes went by. Then the whispers began. The teller leaned in toward another employee. Both glared in her direction. A guy in line huffed audibly, muttering something under his breath. Alyssa tried not to notice it, gripping her purse. At last, the manager returned, but not with her cash. He held the check as if it outraged him. "This isn't legitimate," he stated. "Where did you obtain it?" The words cut deeper than she anticipated. "It's my paycheck," she murmured. "From work." He didn't even attempt to conceal the smirk. "You realize we can't just deposit anything that comes in here. Too many scams these days." Alyssa felt her anger boil in her chest. She'd read the same scenario happen in headlines online. Black customers being defrauds for having the temerity to possess money. But she never imagined she'd be among them. She demanded that he call her employer. He declined. She insisted she show her company ID, her paycheck stub, even her email receipt. He dismissed it with a wave, not caring. Behind her, a voice whispered, "Most likely fake anyway." Laughter ensued. Alyssa's eyes blurred, not with tears, yet, but with incredulity. She had worked so hard, obeyed every guideline, done everything to show she was where she belonged. And now, here she was, being treated like a suspect in front of strangers. When the manager finally spoke, his words cut deeper than any yell could. "We're not cashing this. If you think it's real, take it somewhere else." And then, with everybody watching, he ripped the check neatly in half. The sound of ripping paper rang through the still lobby. Alyssa was paralyzed, her heart thudding in her ears. For an instant, no one stirred. Then, slowly, the teller slid the ripped pieces in front of her, impassive. "Next customer," she said. Alyssa cradled the shredded paper in shaky hands. All eyes in the room followed her, some curious, some self-satisfied. none willing to confront her hurt. She exited, her legs trembling, her pride broken. The air outside was thick, suffocating her as she clung to try and breathe. On the ride home, the city whizzed by her window. Twinkling towers and throngs of people, a world that moved on without being aware of the little injustice it had just perpetrated. She relived it all in her head. The looks, the sidelong glances, the incredulity in their eyes. They never ever looked at her as an individual, only a stereotype that they had made up their minds was true. But as she dug into her purse for the ripped check, her fury started to harden into something icy. Because they did not know the one thing that could make their condescending self-assurance turn to regret. The identity of her mother. And soon, they were going to learn. The following morning, Monica Green, Alyssa's mother, stepped into the same bank her daughter had departed in shame from, though this time, the air changed around her before she even uttered a word. She did not arrive quietly. She did not need to. She brought with her the sort of authority that caused even confidence to quake. Staff members sat up straight at their workstations. The manager glanced up, already expecting trouble. He knew the surname on the appointment list but hadn't made the connection yet. When Monica reached the desk, she put something down on the marble counter, a gold-embossed business card. Monica L. Green, Chief Executive Officer, Greenstone Technologies. Then she pushed forward the shredded fragments of her daughter's check. The manager's face turned white. "Ma'am, She interrupted him with a silence so cold it stilled the room. "Yesterday, your employees accused my daughter of forgery. They shredded her paycheck, my company's paycheck. Whispers ran through the line, phones came up discreetly. The teller who had laughed the previous day now gazed at the floor. Monica moved closer. That check was written on my corporate account, an account your branch has serviced for 8 years. So tell me." Her tone fell lower, measured, controlled. "How did my daughter not appear to be someone who could earn it?" No one said anything. The room hung, suspended between fear and guilt. The manager stuttered, words falling under the crush of understanding. I'm so sorry, Ms. Green. It was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" Monica's eyes didn't blink. "Because what you ripped up wasn't a piece of paper. It was a young woman's faith in justice. And that," she spat, her voice growing tight, "can't be taped back together." Security guards shifted uncomfortably. The silence hung, thick. Alyssa stood behind her mother, her heart pounding, not from shame this time, but from something stronger. Pride. Vindication. At that moment, all the faces that had disbelieved her looked at her in a different way. Not as a girl who didn't fit in, but as the daughter of power, of worth, of someone they could never ignore again. But as cameras snapped and rumors circulated on the internet, Alyssa understood something more profound. This wasn't about her win. It was evidence of how fast dignity is challenged, and how infrequently it's regained. The bank made a public apology within days. Statements, press releases, vows of sensitivity training. Cameras snapped the manager pale and gaunt, the same one who had smirked before, now stumbling through apologies on television. But to Alyssa, no newspaper headline could erase what occurred in that lobby. She still recalled the ripping of paper, the burning of eyes that sized her up as not quite worthy, the silent shame of being silently told in a look that she wasn't a part of the world her mother constructed. But from that hurt, something was born. Alyssa began to speak up, first to her friends, then online, until her tale reached far beyond the city limits. Thousands shared their own tales of being questioned, dismissed, or belittled simply because of their skin color. What started as one instance of injustice became a reflection for millions. Her mother's money may have pressured the bank into an apology, but Alyssa understood something more profound. Power alone should not be enough protection against bigotry, because few ever get that opportunity. Few ever have someone influential enough to make the world take notice. Weeks after, Alyssa went back to the same bank, not for revenge, but for closure. She walked through the glass doors, her head held high, the torn check neatly framed in her hand. It was no longer a symbol of shame. It was a symbol of survival, of truth. She turned away and walked out, as she glanced back once more and thought, they didn't just underestimate me, they revealed themselves. Because racism doesn't ever shout. Sometimes it smiles behind a counter. Sometimes it deceives in policy and politeness. But every time it goes unchallenged, it grows stronger. So the question isn't whether Alyssa received her justice. The real question is, how many more Alyssas will have to struggle to have theirs before we finally alter the system that made her tale possible?